Well, good morning, everyone. It is a pleasure for us being here, especially at the stage hosted by our colleagues of Day One. So we would like to thank the organizers for inviting us. My name is Guillermo Perez. Here with me is Álvaro de Sicart. We are both managers at the Innovation Department of CaixaBank. And in this session, we will basically walk you through the core of our work at the department, going through the approach, methodology, and how we interact with the fintech ecosystem.
Thank you, Guillermo. So as he said, we are working together in the innovation department. And my main role is divided in 3 different tasks. The first one is to expand the innovation culture inside CaixaBank. The second one would be to lead innovation projects. And the third one, we will see later on in the future what we define Horizon 3 projects, such as quantum computing. And now we're going to explain what do we understand as innovation in CaixaBank. When you check innovation definitions in business schools, and every company understands something different by innovation. And this is why we think it's good to frame what we understand as innovation in CaixaBank. So here we can see that we say that it's to release new products, services, or business models. We can also include to offer new services or products for a different kind of user, a different targeted user. This is also considered innovation. Then we say that it's potentially focused on new technologies. It's important for us to identify that we have we will see later on the methodology, that we have a radar for new technologies or emerging technologies that are coming in, but it's not completely compulsory to make new technologies a part of innovation. You can always innovate with current technologies, as we will see later on the methodology we use of the 3 horizons. Then we like to focus on the user. For us, it's very important that the user feels that CaixaBank is relevant, and this is why we identify and we use as a compass that the user is interested in what we are doing, and the market needs is very important for us. We will see it on the framework that we use. And finally, the regulatory requirements. We feel that on the banking industry, CaixaBank is like a fish swimming on the seas, and the regulatory requirements are the water that we are all surrounded by. And finally, the most important part of innovation for us is to ensure that we are generating or an increase on revenue, or a reduction on cost, or an increase on client satisfaction. This is the definition of innovation that we see at CaixaBank, and I would like to show 2 examples of innovation that we are trying to avoid normally. There is a very famous cookie company that makes black cookies with the inside of cream, and they're super popular, and they make every summer a flavor that is very popular. Sometimes they do it watermelon flavor or cotton candy flavor. This kind of innovation increases their sales on the traditional cookie, but it's mainly a reduction on cost on marketing. This is something that we try to avoid. When we make innovation, we always think on what is the best for the user. Our goal is not to be an innovation theater, and this is also good to have in mind when we innovate. And there is also another example that it's very important for us that we can mention, which is the traditional Segway. I think you understand the old Segway that used to have 2 wheels. You have to lean forward and backwards. This vehicle, you cannot see it anymore on the streets because when it was invented, the client, the engineers that did it, they believed that it was going to revolutionize the cities, how they were made. But in the end, what happened is that they are only being used in airports and university campuses. And this is why we focus always on ensure that regulatory requirements are in line, and this is what failed mainly on the Segway, and we always want to have this in mind to ensure that we are doing the right innovation and following our strategic planning that we will see in the future. So Guillermo, can you explain what we do more specifically?
Yeah, a little bit about our roles in the innovation department. The first thing we do is basically scouting, so staying alert on all the trends that we have in the market, potential competitors, basically to identify opportunities for our bank. And that means analyzing disruptive technologies, emerging players, or potential solutions that could lead to developing new products or new services. Second one will be basically testing, so piloting with new technologies based on relevant cases that are directed by new trends or even by regulatory requirements, which for us as a bank, it's quite relevant. Third one is supporting the business areas. For us, it's also important not to be only on the innovation side, but being able to support them, to give them resources, expertise, and even some point finding these solutions that they need to solve some of the challenges that they have. And one transversal, which is basically called the culture building, and at some point just fostering all the innovation content within the bank, and being able to give all the employees the resources, but also the support so they can innovate. It doesn't mean that everybody in the bank has to innovate, but at least we need to make sure that if they want to, they have the tools to do it. Okay, in terms of lines of business, basically those 6 lines are our focus right now. The first one would be the new payment methods, so everything that has to do with account-to-account payments, cross-border remittances, or even agentic commerce. It's a great line for us, but also everything that has to do with identity management. And in the horizon right now, we have the arrival of the new digital identity wallet in Europe. In that sense, it will allow our clients to identify themselves, store credentials, execute payments, or even sign contracts electronically. So at the end, we need to be prepared for that, and we need to adapt. The second one is basically related to new consumption models based on personalized advice and improved financial health. And in this case, we need to make sure as well that we give our clients all the tools so they know about their expenses, their financial habits, and they also know how to plan, how to budget, how to save, or even how to invest with confidence. And it's also really important because at the end what we see is that a lot of our clients, they don't have enough knowledge to do that, or they struggle when they need to understand some of the financial products. Third would be basically the use of artificial intelligence for improving internal processes, and that means optimizing the process itself, but reducing operational costs, enhancing efficiency, or even improving as well the part of fraud detection and fraud prevention. Then also artificial intelligence, in this case, to transform the customer experience and enhancing the use of the app. And we've seen as well in the environment a lot of our clients that are starting to use the conversational models to compare, to search for products, or even seek for advice. So we need to adapt to that. And in that sense, we are also executing some projects in that line. Then, of course, assessing the potential of digital assets, which is a super important trend. It is true that it's pretty regulated right now by MiCA, but at the same time, it's reshaping how our clients pay, invest, or even interact with the bank in a much more accessible and transparent way. And last but not least, everything that has to do with the application of new technologies and computing paradigms. And in this case, we have, for example, quantum in the horizon, and it's something that might seem far away, but we need to stay aware of which could be the trends and also the use cases that could apply to banking. So in this case, we cannot release a lot of information about the projects we are currently having, but we recently disclosed this project is a Gen AI assistant that basically helps to understand the needs of the customers when they approach the assistant. It's a tool also to give extra information, clarify requirements, or answer some questions that the clients may have. And in this case, it's also useful because at the end, whenever the client is ready to contract and proceed with the transaction, the AI assistant hands it off to a human specialist, so it's a smooth transition, so he can proceed with finishing the transaction. Right now, the main use case is basically for applying for a loan, so you can simulate amounts, installments, or even terms. But in the future, we will open that, and we will include other products like, for example, mortgages. It is true that I think around August last year, we released a similar assistant, in this case for cards. So you could search for different cards, compare between them, and also proceed with the transaction within the same customer journey. So about our methodology.
Thank you, Guillermo. I think, first of all, I would like to explain why we think it's so important to have a very robust methodology when we innovate in a large company. In some areas, people believe that the very important part of innovation is having a great idea or having a great inspiration. What we think is it's aligned with what Pablo Picasso said. He said inspiration exists, but it should find you working. It should find you prepared. It should find you working, and this is why we think it's to have a very solid methodology and keep always working. When the inspiration arrives, you are already working on that. There is another point that we believe is very important for innovation teams, which is something that we have learned from an MIT professor that we have been very lucky to have several talks with him, who is George Westerman. He knows a lot about innovation, and he explained us the 6 S's methodology, where he explains what should have a very good innovation team. And I'm not going to go through all the S's. One is a small team. It should be separated, seen, shared with a lot of information with other companies. But the most important one of them is it should be systematic. This is why we are aligned with this philosophy, and we have a strong methodology. So we can see that we have the knowledge sharing part of the methodology, then the ideation, and then the execution. It seems very easy, but on top of everything, we have the strategic plan. We believe that innovation department in CaixaBank should be at the service of the strategic planning. There are other companies that define innovation with something very different to the core business of the company. We believe that it should be completely aligned. The strategic plan is like our compass that guides us where we have to be. No, if a man knows not to which port he sails, no wind is favorable. So this is what we believe. Even if we have a tendency that is going in one direction, if our strategic planning is guiding us, we'll succeed on the innovation and the effort that we are doing on that innovation. So this is why we have on top of everything the strategic planning. Then we have the knowledge sharing, that we have selected a magnifying glass, which is something that symbolizes the research that we do. We like to research a lot of what is happening on the different companies that are on the Fintech industry, such as our competitors, neobanks, or even different industries that sharing of financial services. And this is one of the radars that we have, of the 3 radars that we do quarterly or yearly. Then the second radar that we have in place is the technological radar. We are always looking for new technologies with the help of our CaixaBank Tech team that are always looking which are the emerging technologies that are going out and are inspiring us to identify new opportunities. As we said before, technology is not the key driver for innovation, but it's one of the drivers that we think it's very good to inspire. And then the third part is the regulatory radar that we have in place to identify what is happening on the regulatory environment, such as the digital euro, for example. It's very important to have it in mind to planify all the innovation planning that you have in mind. So with that research done, the next step is to share this information with different business areas and start the ideation. With them, we share this information to inspire them, to find which problems they have that can be solved with these new ideas, and then we build workshops. Normally we use a methodology which is called problem solving, where we really focus on the definition of the problem to make sure that we understand what is wrong with the thing that we want to solve. And then we go to the root of the problem and we identify different solutions that could be work to solve this problem. And with that, we prioritize these solutions. Normally we use the SAF methodology to prioritize. The one is the suitability with the strategic plan that we have seen before. Then is the feasibility. It's always important to understand the cost of this solution. And finally, how connected with the business it is, the return on investment, or the benefits for the user that we have. And with that prioritization, we build the innovation plan. And then we jump to the execution phase. And inside the execution phase is where scouting comes in, and it's so important. Sometimes the execution phase implies that our technological teams needs to develop something, or sometimes we need to find someone outside the company, and Guillermo will explain later, to identify which kind of solution could solve the problems that we have identified before. And finally, while we are building this solution, we are always measuring with KPIs what is happening with this product or this solution. We can go to the next slide.
Okay, in terms of trends, one of the things that's pretty relevant for us is that in the past we used to classify all the fintech companies in the ecosystem between different categories like payments, financing, digital assets, investments, big tech, you name it. But what we've been seeing in the past few months, about the last year, is that there has been a market convergence, and they have been upgraded their services and products to become challenger banks. So for us, it's a big threat because at the end we compete for client attention and client loyalty, and they are accelerating as well innovation. So we need to determine whether we are going to be first movers, fast followers, or even, as Alvaro likes to say, right movers. Right? But at the same time, we operate in a pre-regulated environment, and we are also a big and traditional bank, so it's not easy to us to decide when to move and how to do it. In terms of the requirements, as I was mentioning before, it hinders a little bit how we innovate, but at the same time, it makes us adapt some of our systems or even processes to make sure that our clients have fair access to all of our services. Here we have an example of what we had to do in the last few weeks, because starting this month of April, all of our clients will be able to come to our branches and identify themselves or even open a bank account using the digital ID that we will be able for all citizens. And in that sense, we had to find a solution to adapt our systems to make sure we could capture the information behind the QR that's being generated with the mobile app, integrate it, and store it the same way we are doing it with the physical ID that they can do right now. Okay. From an innovation perspective, it's not only about finding the best solution, but also to exploring potential synergies, as I mentioned before, with the European digital identity wallet, or even finding other use cases for these solutions that we found, or trying to find potential business models so we can monetize as well the services that we are offering. Okay, how we allocate the resources.
Exactly. We have seen what we understand by innovation, what is our methodology, but it's always very important to allocate correctly all the resources. Even though we are a big company, we do not have a limitless source of resources. So we like to use this three horizons framework from McKinsey. We think it's the good thing of it is that its simplicity is very easy to use, but in the end it's very powerful. So basically we have two axes here. One is the market. On the bottom part of the market we have a traditional market that you're in, then you have an adjacent market, and at the end you have a completely new market that you are not entering yet. And then on the horizontal axis we have the technology. You can have the traditional technology or current technology that you are using, or a new technology, or even an emerging technology. With those two axes, you can identify all your projects, either in the horizon 1, the horizon 2, or horizon 3. The first one would be your core business, because it's traditional market and current technology. Then you can make a mix of new technologies and current market, or new transformation market with a current technology, as we said before. And with that, you can identify every project where is it located. The important thing with that is that once you have located the project, you can identify which side of team should be working on that, because it requires different tools of management of the teams and different risk management tools too. And then you can also ensure that you are making a good allocation of resources within the three horizons. Because normally it's recommended to have a 70% on horizon 1, 20% on horizon 2, and a 10% of projects. This is not a fixed rule, it's not compulsory to follow it, but it's very important to ensure that projects in horizon 3 are growing, and then they jump to horizon 2, and these projects in horizon 2 jump to horizon 3. If you forgot in a moment you don't have any horizon 2 projects, probably your pipeline will get stuck and you're not doing it correctly to ensure that you are giving value to the user. So if we go to the next slide, we have seen how we allocate resources, but now it's time to see how we're collaboration with innovation hubs and how we're collaboration with universities. When we say that we collaborate with innovation hubs, we have relationships with finance innovation hubs in Barcelona, also in Madrid. We have also collaborations with interbanking innovation hubs that we think are very interesting, and there we can share this kind of information and other information on what are we innovating, and we think that sharing information with these innovation hubs is completely gives you a lot of information to understand what is happening, and also it's very enrichful. Another thing that we like to do with this type of in this type of innovation hubs is to gather information for our technological traders and also on the commercial trader that we do to understand what is happening with our competitors, what is happening also with neobanks or other fintech companies. Another thing that we have is partnership with universities, which we find is very, very interesting to go deeper with Horizon 3 projects, such as quantum computing, for example. Universities, normally they do very deep research, and for companies like us, it's difficult to do deep research, but with this collaboration with them, we can make partnerships to understand what is happening all around quantum computing, for example, or we can also understand what is happening with other types of technologies or emerging technologies that we don't understand yet. Another thing that we do is to collaborate with research centers that can help also our security teams, for example, to identify new projects on cybersecurity. And also, we like to, with universities and research centers, to ensure that we are making conferences with teachers that can help us. As I said before, with the MIT, we have collaborations with George Westermans and other teachers, and we think this is very interesting to understand what they think of the future, how they see the professors, the next steps or the opportunities of new technologies or new business areas that are growing. And to strengthen the ecosystem, we believe on this kind of events, to share information, to make, well, Guillermo will explain later, to ensure that with the startups we give prizes to them and we evaluate them, and we give some insights from the part of CaixaBank. And the benefits for the organization, they have been mentioned, but basically we can see we have more visibility on what is going on. We can also identify new opportunities of business or gather insights from professors that are really connected with the ecosystem. And finally, I would say, is to understand which startups could help us or identify them. So Guillermo, can you explain how we do the scouting?
Yeah, a little bit about the process from scouting to selecting a potential partner or company that we are interested in. I think the first part is basically the scouting process. So going out to the market, we can do it as it's highlighted in the slide through day one. For example, they are doing a really good job with scale-ups and startups. So for us, it's a source of potential interesting companies, and you can proactively go to them and reach out and see if they have interesting startups for us to solve some specific challenges or to find a specific solution. Or we can do it openly in the market and also check for some of the agreements that we have with universities, with innovation hubs, and so on. The second part would be filtering. So basically, all the solutions that we have identified, we need to determine if they make sense from a technical point of view. So we select 1, 2, or 3. So we can then start running pilots and testing the technology itself. After the pilots, we of course would need to evaluate. If it's just a technology, of course, we would need to see which are the gains in terms of efficiency and also the reduction of costs. And if it's a service itself, we could potentially assess the appetite in the market. So if our clients really would like to have this kind of service, and then evaluate it as well from a financial and business perspective with the costs that would imply the new service, the potential return on the investment, or even the strategic fit itself. And then in terms of the selection, so we have different types of ways of doing the agreements with third parties. If it's just a technology, we could integrate the technology and merge it with our own systems. If it's a service, for example, we could either redirect the clients to the service as a third-party platform. This is something not that common, but we've done it in the past with, for example, some tax companies. Or we can offer it within CaixaBank with the brand of CaixaBank itself. And that depends on multiple variables, but we could see like the cost of development, the integration complexity, the possibility of scaling the solution. So there are different variables that we would consider before deciding for one option or the other one. So you want to conclude with the key takeaways of the presentation?
Sure. So we have seen what we understand by innovation in CaixaBank. We have seen all the areas in which we are working on. Then the methodology that we use, that I mean it's really important to have a guided methodology to innovate. And finally, we have seen how we allocate resources, how we collaborate in the innovation hubs, and how we do the scouting in CaixaBank. So thank you everyone for coming here and hearing us. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. We have some time. If someone wants to ask a question, please raise your hand and we will hand you a microphone. And thank you everyone.